Hey, what's up everyone? Thanks for stopping by. This week what we're going to be talking about is specifically appendix carry holsters. If you're in the market for buying another one, or if you're just in the market for buying your first one, period, some of the considerations you might want to look for when you're browsing online to make sure we're getting a pretty good holster right from the get-go and you don't end up with a whole box of holsters that go completely unused because we've made a mistake. Lord knows I have an entire box full of just crap that's just completely useless to me because I made mistakes, a whole lot of mistakes when buying them online. So we're going to talk about some good qualities of a good concealed carry holster for appendix carry, a little bit about the belt and holster relationship, and I'm going to also show you guys one specific holster that I have that's extremely dangerous to wear, and subsequently I will never wear it because of that. You can actually press the trigger on the gun while it's fully seated. So all of which pretty good and important information. So let's get started. The belt is the basically your bottom line base layer of what's going to kind of dictate whether or not this holster is going to kind of be work for us or against us. Yes, the holster in and of itself can be comfortable, but the belt that actually supports the holster throughout the entire day of wearing it does play a really big deal. Here I got a couple of two examples. So this is a I don't know where this belt came from. I think it came from Nordstrom's or something. It's just for when I have to get kind of dressed up nice, and I don't wear this belt. Someone else kind of grabbed it for me. But you guys can kind of see how floppy this belt is here. Here is one of my holsters that I wear. Got an empty gun. Gun's fully seated in the holster. And when you put it on, what you'll see here is you get this effect right here. So you see right now the belt is completely unsupporting of the holster any which way. It kind of just flops around. That's an empty gun. Now if we have the weight from a fully loaded magazine, obviously that just simply intensifies the problem a little bit. And because this belt is really floppy, what that's actually going to happen is it's going to make this inherently a little bit more uncomfortable throughout the day. I'm not so much as worried about the comfortability, but more so the consistency. So when we have belts like this and are really floppy and they don't support the gun very well, what you're going to find is every single time we go to draw, the gun's going to be in a completely different place, or it's going to constantly be shifting within the pants, and that's obviously a big problem. To build a good deliberate draw, we need to have good consistency from actually accessing the gun and building our master firing grip, and in order to facilitate that, we do need a good belt. A good example of a good belt, and this is kind of one of the gold standards for belts out there. This is the Aries Aegis. Right now I'm actually wearing a reinforced leather belt, but you guys can kind of see the difference right now. So this is a dedicated gun belt, and this is there's nothing in the chamber right now. There's just a magazine in here for weight, with a Glock 19 weapon mounted light. So it's a pretty heavy setup right now, and you guys can kind of see just from having it on a decent gun belt right now, the actual support that it's actually giving the gun. So the belt and holster relationship is a really big deal. Some good belts that we can probably try and use. Aries, definitely the gold standard on gun belts, at least in my opinion. Carbon Tactics, they make phenomenal belts. Currently right now I'm actually wearing the Magpul, I think it's called the Tejas belt. That's actually been a really comfortable belt for me. I really dig it. So definitely we got to start with a good belt. Definitely no compromise on the belt itself. So dedicated gun belts, absolutely a must. When we start going into the qualities of a good holster, when I'm personally browsing online, there's a couple key attributes that I'm always looking for. One is adjustable ride height. You'll know a holster has adjustable ride height. You will see the Overhook Struts, whether they're soft loops or these dedicated plastic ones here. And you'll see screw holes here basically, so you can raise the height of the Overhook Strut or lower it depending on the ride height the ride height that you actually need. In regards to these Overhook Struts, not all of them are created equal. I'm going to throw up a couple of pictures right now. What you're seeing right now, those are the Overhook Struts that you would never, ever, ever, ever want to use under no circumstances. They do not bite your belt. They do not offer a really good purchase on the belt. And I've seen a lot of people, they go to draw their gun and their entire rig comes right out of their pants. When we're looking for Overhook Struts, these right here, at least in my opinion, I think these are the gold standard. It's kind of a little bit of a spin-off of the G-code Overhook Strut. The only difference real with these guys is these do not have a negative cant. The G-code Overhook Struts, they have a negative cant that basically makes the strut go this way just to help facilitate and push the gun a little bit further back onto you. Secondly, with Overhook Struts, these are the Raven concealment struts. These work really, really well just as well as the G codes. So I would basically kind of narrow it down to using the G code overhook struts, the RCS, or these. This is basically the G code strut just minus the negative cant, and that's kind of what I'm actually using on my Wiedemann Gotham. Just these right here. They offer a really nice purchase. These things have never failed me. When the HSP Incog came out, I had gotten one maybe 3-4 months since that came out. I was active duty still at the time, so I can't say I wore it for years and years and years. However, I did wear it, you know, when days off and when I wasn't on post, and subsequently when I did get out of the Army, wearing my gun every single day of the week, every time I go anywhere. I've used these classes, or used these holsters with this type of strut in classes that I've took, classes that I've given. I've been in the prone. I've pretty much been through a whole gamut of stuff to include combative type training, and I've never had a problem with these holsters actually losing a bite on my belt. Not even one of them, so definitely good to go. Another good quality of the holster that we should be looking at is the rigidity of the holster. I would like to kind of say that all Kydex is going to serve you pretty well and it's going to be rigid. That's not necessarily the case. A lot of that depends on how the heat treatment was when it was actually being made. This is a really good rig right here. I was wearing this for a long time. This is the Tier 1 Concealed Aegis, and you can see right now that I'm pressing as hard as I can, and you can see how rigid that holster remains. Big deal with that is one, you don't want something where the sweat guards start potentially rolling in. What happens when you have something like that, and you see that from a lot of unreinforced leather type holsters, when the heat shield, or excuse me, the sweat guards kind of starts rolling in a little bit, you have the inherent risk of it trying to fish its way inside your trigger guard. So there's nothing wrong with leather holsters. Let's just try and make sure that if we do pick up a leather holster, it does have a steel reinforced insert somewhere, or the holster was made in a way that's extremely rigid. So rigidity is extremely important. Next up, this one, I might be kind of on my own with this, but I'll explain it to you guys. I do look for a holster that have a 2 overhook strut system on them. So right here you have 2 overhook struts, 2 overhook struts, all good to go. Mag Caddies, I'm not too worried about it. I'm cool with one simple strut on a Mag Caddy. The reason I always look for a holster with 2 struts, and here's a couple pictures I'll flash across the screen of examples of holsters with just simply 1 strut or a clip, is I kind of find that, yeah, those ones, the holsters that actually have 1 clip, they actually might be a little bit more comfortable simply because they will move with your body as you sit or bend, lean, this or that. And we're supposed to have our belt relatively tight in order to make that gun snug against our body so it doesn't move. But that 1 strut, I constantly find that gun kind of canting one way or another, which therefore when I actually go to draw the gun, it leads to inconsistencies in my grip. A big thing, I need my gun to be in the exact same spot every single time I go to draw it, not just like a 1/2 inch to the left or 1/2 inch to the right, depending how you're kind of seeing my hands on the camera. If my gun's a little bit this way and I get really jazzed up and I need to get on that gun and get it out really quick, I certainly don't want to pick up the back of the gun right here and have that space where I really want to get up on that good high-tang grip. So if that gun's kind of canted over a little bit and I go to drive down there and pick up that gun, I don't want to mess my grip up a little bit. And I do kind of find that to be a problem with some of the single clip type systems out there. Another thing, like this right here, this is just a Mag Caddy. It has a single clip on it right now. And this might be a bit of an anecdote, but I'll back up a little bit. And I'm going to adjust the camera down just a teeny bit right here so you can see my waistline. In training and in practice, this has happened to me a few times, which is another reason why I'm not a big fan of just the 1 clip. So got a magazine in here. If I were carrying this Mag Caddy right here, I got it just slightly off the center line of my body. I'm a right-handed shooter, so this is where I would carry my ammo. I wouldn't say it's too far-fetched because it's happened to me in training. So if it's happened to me in training and there's only a certain amount of stress that you actually can create on a range versus the actual stress of someone was actually trying to shoot you and our heart rate is at 200 plus and they're shitting our pants. If I were to go and draw something, it's pretty easy right now just to simply grab the entire package by accident and pull the entire holster out. It's pretty easy for me to get this on and get this off. 2 struts kind of mitigates some of that potential problems just a little bit, albeit with all things being equal. What you just seen right there, just me kind of fishing it out. That's a lot of technique and that's training. So trying to not pull out the entire rig, a lot of that's going to come down to how you actually defeat your cover garment. And I personally, I don't, when carrying appendix or even going for the gun or the reload, you'll never see me fish down to the bottom of that shirt. Simple inches, and I'm not trying to get too sidetracked here, but if I'm working in a like, hey bro, take it easy type position, let me just kind of go sideways here. The distance from my hand from here to the bottom of my shirt, hypothetically, we'll just call it 20 inches. So I have 20 inches of movement to go and defeat the shirt right here. From here to here, we're talking about maybe about 12 to 15 inches. Hypothetically, I don't have a ruler or a tape measure out here. So just sheer numbers right now, it's a little quicker for me to get to the shirt here than it is down here to start defeating the cover garment. So some of this might be training and kind of due to the technique that you actually use. So if you are kind of hell-bent on using this where you grab the bottom of your shirt, I would definitely advise against using a single click type system. If you know for sure that this is where you're going to grab your shirt and defeat the cover garment, this might not be as big of a deal for you. Next up, one thing that I generally try and look for, I wouldn't say this is an absolute must, but it's definitely a pro, is looking for a holster that actually has a wing. When you have this wing or the concealment claw in here, what basically happens as soon as you put this down your pants and you go to don your holster, this claw here pushes on your belt, which drives the handle a little bit further into you, which helps with printing a whole lot. Do you need this? I wouldn't say it's mandatory, but I definitely think it's a plus. All the good, decent, or at least I'd say the better holsters I have this claw, like this Wiedemann Gotham. This Tier 1 Concealed Aegis has a claw. Another interesting thing with the claws is if you do happen to be find that your gun is still printing a little bit, you can take some washers. I'm sure you have a drawer just full of excess rubber washers and just washers in general. You could take some thicker washers and actually offset the claw from the holster a little bit further, where the claw sits a little bit higher, therefore driving it in a little bit more. So when I look at holsters, it's not the most popular opinion, but I see a lot of guys, they get a holster right out of the box, they put it on and they're like, shit, this holster doesn't work. And I'm like, did you try and tweak it or tinker with it just a little bit? They're like, well, no. I'm like, but when you buy a car, like, is it ready to go right off the lot? Like, do you not have to adjust your seat and your steering wheel, or maybe sync your phone to the radio and adjust your mirrors and all that? And yeah, so I'm like, something that's actually a little bit more of an intimate part of you, arguably, you didn't do any of that to try and tweak it to make it work for you. So when you get a holster, if you need to tweak it a little bit, go for it. Just kind of pay attention to what we're doing and making sure that the need that we want out of the actual tweak that we're giving it isn't going to sacrifice any sort of retention, mobility, or safety. As far as trigger guard coverage, big deal. So I do not think that as a concealed carry you actually need a weapon mounted light. This is one of those things where it's a luxury. If you can actually wear it and get away with it, rock on, do it. It's definitely not a supplement to carrying a handheld light. I found good holsters that enabled me to carry with a weapon mounted light, so I will carry one. So you see here, this holster fully seated, my finger, and I got pretty big hands, and you'll see why I'm even saying this later, my finger cannot get in that trigger guard. There is no way I'm going to be able to press that trigger. With this holster right here, the actual funnel piece right here is a little bit even, we'll say it's a little narrower than the Wiedemann. So there's really nothing getting in here. I can barely get the bed of my nail in here. I got this holster here, and I don't want to be, I'm not going to be that guy and just trash this company. But I got this holster right here. The gun is fully seated. But in this particular case right now, I can take my finger, completely stick it right in there, and press the trigger without even really batting an eyelash. That's a pretty big deal. Cycle the gun so you guys see it's not a fluke. Gun's fully seated. Finger goes right in there without batting an eyelash, and you guys can hear the striker fall forward. What that basically is when we're looking for holsters, in particular if you have one with a weapon mounted light, you want to make sure that that the cutout right here is at least coming out a little bit, because it has to be open and wide enough at least to accept that weapon mounted light. So the funnel has to be open a little bit. We want to be making sure that the funnel is cut correctly. Even with this holster, some people will say, well, what about when it's actually on you? If it's on you and your belt's pressing backwards, doesn't that make it where the Kydex is a little bit more rigid? So I have an empty gun here. Of course I have an empty gun for doing this. Everything's okay. This holster is on right now. It's fully seated. I will back away. And even right now, with this thing being completely fully seated, finger goes right in there and you can hear the striker fall. So be careful with the holsters that you're looking for. Definitely make sure that when we're getting them, like this one, definitely where the trigger guard is, definitely cut way too shallow, excuse me. And you can kind of see how that'd be a problem. The reason I brought up I had big hands, these little sausages attached to these mitts right here, there's no reason at all while this big, gigantic, enormous index finger should be able to find its way inside that trigger guard and press a trigger when a gun's fully seated. Completely unacceptable. When you have a holster like this that's just no good, that's where it should really be going. That's going to be pretty much it for me this week, guys. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop them down in the comment section below. There's no way inherently possible that I can go into every single little detail over covering holsters without making a crazy long video. And honestly, I have like an aversion to even watching long videos, so I refuse to make a crazy long video. So if you have questions that I didn't really cover here, interested to know, drop them in the comment section below. I'll do my best to answer them. That's it for me, guys. You guys stay safe, and thanks for watching.